Hey YouTube, it's an SS here. I wanted to make y'all a quick video today, uh, giving a little bit of tips and tricks, if you will, on grandfather clocks. This particular one is a Howard Miller, I believe model 610202. I'll correct that if I'm mistaken. Um, but yeah, so this grandfather clock was left behind by the previous owner of this house, and for about 5 years it just sat, mostly just decoration. Uh, but it was a couple of years ago now that we had to relocate the clock within the house to make way for some new bookshelves. And so it was at that point that got to wondering, so what's the deal with this clock? Is it broken? Is that why it was left behind? Does it work? Does it need parts? Um, not knowing anything about grandfather clocks, I took to the internet, as any good DIYer might. And so, in my pursuit of information, some very basic information of grandfather clocks and their operation, and potential troubleshooting and diagnosing a non-functioning grandfather clock. Discovered there's about a million different makers and models of grandfather clocks out there. Uh, they all share similar characteristics. It's certainly not one size fits all, but hopefully, whether you have a Howard Miller clock like this one or not, maybe this will help you avoid some of the pitfalls that I encountered along the way of figuring out grandfather clock ownership, if you will. So this grandfather clock is just over 6 feet tall. I'm about 6'1", and the clock is probably 6'3" ish. Um, it is a weight-driven clock. It's what's considered a 7-day clock. You raise the weights up to the top, and it takes approximately 7 days for them to travel all the way down to the bottom before needing to be reset again. Disclaimer, if you're not a fan of regular maintenance of things, regular maintenance in general, a grandfather clock may not be for you. Not that this thing is very involved, but you will have to reset the time and the weights and the pendulum once a week. And some people aren't willing to do that. They have better things to do with their time. Uh, Little intentional pun there. But anyway, here is kind of the brief overview of the outside of the clock here. Here's my assistant, Jasmine. Uh, she's not a whole lot of help, but she's funny looking. But anyway, we'll jump right into it here. Perhaps one of the more obvious things is the large glass door on the front. You can see it has a key here, keeping the door closed. Simple twist of the key, like any other traditional key, will subsequently open the door. And here are the weights and the pendulum. To reset the weights, these weights are not quite all the way down yet, but for the sake of this video, let's pretend that they are. You will want to remove the weights, which is simply just lifting it off the chain. It's just held on there by a very simple hook. You will want to make note of where each weight comes from. Each weight is not the same weight, and the heaviest weight is in the middle. The middle weight is the one that drives And again, I'm not a horologist, so forgive my terminology or lack thereof. Uh, the middleweight is the heaviest, and it keeps the time. And I forget which is which. The left weight is either the chime for the hour, or it's the chime for the minute. And I'm honestly not sure which is which. Not that it really matters. So usually I would like to lay them on the floor in the order that I remove them: the left, the middle, the right. So then to reset the chain to the top, you can see that one end of the chain has a gripper, if you will. It's just a matter of a very simple tug. Does not take much effort. Here's where you need to be careful though. You do not want to go all the way to the top. You will regret it. There's kind of I guess there's perhaps the axis of which it can overcome gravity. I don't know. I'm just kind of making this up as I go, partly to show you that, yeah, even a layman can operate a grandfather clock, and everybody can enjoy the classic chimes. So that's about as high up as you're going to want to go. Any further up than that, and you run the risk that the weights will not come down, it will not keep time, it will not chime. And what's the purpose in that? And I am going to, this is a bit of a two-handed operation to reattach the weights to the hook. I'll be right back with you. So one thing that I meant to do while I had the weights out of it still was show you how to remove the pendulum. I think I can still do this even with the weights reinstalled. But again, if you have any intention of moving your grandfather clock across the room, across town, whatever, you're going to want to remove the weights and the pendulum. The pendulum, similarly to the weights, simply hangs. It has somewhat of a hook, and it's simply a matter of lifting it upward, and you can see the hole and the kind of the cutout on either side of this shaft. It very simply lifts up and out and can be removed. Now, while I have this out, I suppose I should show you most pendulums have an adjustment on the bottom. If your grandfather clock is too fast or too slow, you can turn this little adjustment dial. This clock is very close to spot on, so I'm not actually going to spin this one because it took quite a few tries to finally get it dialed in, literally. But yeah, I forget now whether righty-tighty speeds it up or slows it down, but you can certainly always do a trial by fire. Similarly to the weights, I am going to reinstall the pendulum off camera. It takes two hands, but trust me, it's just as simple to reinstall as it is to remove. Okay, the pendulum and the weights are reinstalled. I want to also show you a means of access to some of the inner workings of the clock. This particular model has these two panels that you simply lift up and out of a recess, and it does take a little bit of finagling to get it out. It is a bit of a tight pressure fit, which you don't want it to fall out, so it's not necessarily a bad thing that it can be cantankerous. Here is some of the inner workings of the clock, gears and chimes and hammers, if that's the correct terminology. Again, forgive me if you know more than me than on grandfather clocks. And that is real dust. That's not just Hollywood dust. That's the real deal, folks. And same thing on this side, a simple lift and maneuver and finagle kind of just every which way you can in a semi-gentle fashion, since it is just thin wood. It certainly can break, especially on these older clocks. The wood starts to get a little bit dry, and I believe this particular model, or this particular clock, I think it was manufactured in 1980, so certainly not old, but old enough that some cautions must be taken. So anyway, again, here's some of the inner workings. Kind of daunting, a little bit intimidating, but there's really just not a ton to it. It's not quite as scary once you're a bit more familiar with your grandfather clock. A lot of the parts just, run in the background, and it's nothing that you really need to know about per se. Okay, so I'm going to set the time on the clock and go ahead and get the pendulum swinging again. I don't remember why, but one of the things that I read initially getting familiarized with grandfather clocks is you want to go counterclockwise when setting the time. Again, I'm not really sure why that is, but that's what I've done since I've been caring for this grandfather clock, and I've never had an issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. You have to be careful to not inadvertently grab a hold of the hour hand as you go around. I've done that a time or two, because you can get the hour chime misaligned, if you will, from the actual time, and I will show you that too. I had to basically, so say it's 8 o'clock and the clock strikes 8, only the chime is only for 6. So somehow or another in the timing of the clock, it has gotten out of sync, if you will. So it's simply a matter of if it chimed 6, what you'll want to do is drag the hour hand over to the 6 and then start your process over of resetting the time. And how it all works, it's amazing. Who initially came up with the function of all of this is kind of a marvel. But very simply, moving the hour hand to the hour that it chimed will almost magically put it back into sync. So let's see. 7:50. Okay, so I've got the clock set to the current time. To get the pendulum started, it's a very simple flick of the pendulum, and I don't know if the video will pick it up, but you can hear the classic tick tock, and that's how you know you've done it right. One thing to note is when you reset your weights and your pendulum and your time and you restart your clock, don't be alarmed if the chimes don't work right away. Sometimes it takes a cycle or two to kind of get back in the rhythm, if you will. Uh, so, for instance, if you reset your clock to 8:55 and 5 minutes later 9 o'clock rolls around and there's no chime, give it till 9:15 or even 9:30, and the chime should, in essence, catch up with itself. I'm sure that's completely improper clock lingo, but yeah, don't be surprised if at first the chimes aren't working. They will. Just give it a little bit of time. Okay, well, if you're still watching, I appreciate it. Hopefully, this does bring you a little bit of knowledge and wisdom about grandfather clocks and just some very generalized tips and tricks. If you are already familiar with grandfather clocks, hopefully this video provided some entertainment value for you, watching me stumble and fumble through some of the ins and outs. But yeah, so if you have a grandfather clock, uh, enjoy it. It's an amazing piece of craftsmanship, and if you lucked into inheriting one either by a house that you purchased that the owner left behind, or maybe a family member, do some research, and you might be surprised as far as its value and its age, and certainly there's some mechanical marvel to it all. Uh, so anyway, enjoy it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.